So I do this lecture at the beginning of every semester for this class simply because it sets the groundwork, in my opinion, for professional networking and what that means as we go through the semester. And that means who you meet, who you're going to meet that'll come into this room, just building your network. Likewise, people are going to tell you, you've probably heard this a million times, oh, you need to network, you need to meet people, you need to connect on LinkedIn, you need to build your network. That's all fine and dandy. That's wonderful. Build your network all you want. But I'm going to take you a step further about building your network. And I'm going to talk about two things. One is what actually makes a relationship between you and another person, not just that you exchange a business card. And then two, what I call is network maintenance. So often people will tell you you need to build your network, and they'll tell you how to network, go to these events, do these kinds of things, but they don't tell you about how to maintain your network. They don't tell you what it means to keep it going or keep it healthy or continue to build and maintain it. How do you maintain old relationships so they become valuable 10 years from now and not just they just kind of die on the vine kind of thing? So we're going to talk about that as well. But to do all that, I knew this wasn't going to work, Ruben. Okay. So to do all that, I first want to start off with one, what are we talking about when we say networking? And two, I'm going to talk to you about my personal network, about what got me standing here. Because I think that's a good part of understanding why you need to build networks in the first place. So does anybody know who Stanley Milgram is? Other than reading this slide. Anybody heard the guy before? Fair enough. So Stanley Milgram was a researcher, and he decided one day he wanted to understand how connected we are to other people. Like in relationships, who do you know? And so he actually took a bunch of letters and he mailed them to people in, I think it was either Lincoln or Omaha, Nebraska. In some respects, it doesn't matter because half the population in Nebraska lives in Lincoln and Omaha. And he sent them off into, let's just say, Lincoln. And he said, if you know this particular attorney in Boston, I want you to send him this letter. If you don't know that person, I want you to send the letter to somebody you think might know that person. And then that person that received the letter got the same instructions. If you know the person in Boston, send it to them. If you're not, send it to somebody. And so by the time all the letters got to the attorney in Boston and they looked at them, on average, everybody was 6 steps away from the attorney in Boston. That's where the phrase 6 degrees of separation came from, right? That's where the term 6 degrees of separation came from. That's where the Kevin Bacon experiment started from. That's where all that came from Stanley Milgram. And so what he showed in that experiment is that no matter who we are 6 people away from anybody else. I'm going to tell you that in your career and the jobs that you receive and get and acquire throughout your career, you're 2 degrees away from every job. Not 6, 2. So you might be 6 degrees away from, let's say, the President of the United States, but you're 2 degrees away from your job. All right? And we'll talk about that. So when I was in high school, and that's me up there in that picture, I think I was 89. I was probably a senior in high school then. So when I was in high school, I was a junior actually at the time, I decided I was going to do a speech contest. And in the speech contest, we got to talk about anything we wanted to related to agriculture. And I'm all about winning. And when it comes to winning, I believe winning is about differentiating yourself from others, right? I mean, in essence, winning is scoring more points, which is differentiating yourself. But either way, how do you make yourself different? So I said, hey, I can tell you I need a topic that nobody else is going to talk about. That'll differentiate me. So I decided to talk about farming on the moon. Extraterrestrial farming. How do we do farming in space? And so I'm thinking, okay, what's my first step? I don't necessarily know about it. I can't look it up on the internet because the internet didn't exist at that time. There weren't any books at the library on it. How do I find out about this topic? So as anybody does, when you want to know something, what do? You go to somebody you think knows, right? So the only person I thought might know would be my dad. My dad actually worked at Johnson Space Center, and so he worked in the space industry. I kind of knew what my dad did, but not exactly. So I went to my dad and I said, hey, do you know anybody that knows this? And he said, well, not really, but let me see what I can do. So my dad pokes around, comes back to me one day and says, Here's the phone number of a guy. His name is Dr. Don Henninger. That's him right there. Give him a call. And apparently he knows about this subject. I called Don up. We set up an appointment for me to go meet him. And I go into his office. Turns out Don is like the world-renowned expert in extraterrestrial farming, right? He's written books on it, papers, and everything. So I meet with him. And to give you another idea, the time of life it was, there was no internet. So I walk into his office. He hands me a stack of about 4 or 5 books with a bunch of papers on top, journal papers on top of it, slides it over to me and says, read this. It'll tell you enough you need to know. So I go home, I read all that. I do the speech, so on and so forth. Wonderful. I go on and compete. I got second place in state. Yay, wonderful. But let's see, I don't know what the next one. I'm in college now and I need a summer job. So in order to get a summer job, I'm like, what do I do? Right? I don't want to work at McDonald's. I don't want to work retail. I want to do something cool. So I called Don Henninger. I hadn't talked to him in, I don't know, 2 years maybe 3. And I say, hey, you remember me? And he goes, oh, yeah. And I tell him, I said, you know what? I'd really love to work in your lab at Johnson Space Center. I think it'd be really cool. You got an opportunity. And he says to me, no, but I can connect you with somebody that might. So essentially, he connected me with someone, and I worked in his lab under actually Dan Bard at the time, and worked in this lab, and we were developing life support systems, particularly plant growth systems for exploration of space. If you've seen the movie Martian, very similar, right? And so we were doing this. I got to meet Dan. It was wonderful. Dan became a wonderful mentor, and I worked every single summer as an undergraduate in that lab. Now, I'm going to say something I love to say because it was a back in the day, and it's not true anymore, because in 2003, I think the state of Texas made a decision to transfer a lot of the financial debt of college to families instead of the state, and tuition went up. But I would work my summers in this lab, making $9 an hour, working 40 hours a week, and made enough money to pay my tuition bill for the next year. That shows you how much cheaper tuition was back then. But in 2003, the state decided to make a decision to take the debt off the state and push some of it to the families, and that's when tuition went up. And that's why college has gotten more expensive. So, needless to say, as I'm working all these summers, and when I graduated from college in '93, the job market sucked big time. My neighbors next to me were posting rejection letters all over their living room wall because they couldn't get a job. I got a job before I graduated because apparently the guy that was running the lab that I worked in, not Dan Bard, another guy, was leaving. Don Henninger calls me up and says, hey, you interested in a job? And I'm like, sure. And he goes, well, the manager of the lab's leaving. Would you want to be the lab manager? You've worked here every summer. You know, you've got the background. And I'm like, sure, I'd love to do that. And so he says to me, great, I'll put you in contact with somebody. So I reach out to somebody else. I both get a job there, and I take a permanent job working as a lab manager in this lab. So I'm running the lab now. Pretty cool thing. Well, during that time, I meet this guy, Casey Ting. Casey Ting is a professor at Rutgers and doing some cool stuff, working with some NASA projects and things. And I decide that during my time there, I'm going to get my master's. So I go to Dan Barta and I say, Dan, I said, who do I go? I want to get my master's. Where do I go? And he says, you know what? You've met Casey Ting at Rutgers. They got a really great program there. It's actually one of the best in the country in controlled environment agriculture. Call him. So I call Casey Ting. Casey Ting says, hey, I can put you in contact with somebody here that I think would be interested. And so in that process, I meet, and likewise, at that time I meet these two people. I'm just bringing them up because they'll come into my play later. They came down to NASA at one time. But Casey Ting put me in contact with Gene Giacomelli. Gene Giacomelli brought me in on a master's program, and I ended up working in a master's program at Rutgers. And ultimately, when I got done there, Rutgers received a NASA center funded by NASA, big center, and the people that ran that center were these two guys who I met when I was at Johnson Space Center. And so when I got done with my master's, those people hired me to actually run as the administrator for that center. So then, while I'm working at Rutgers, now I'm employed there, I meet this guy, Joe Robles. And Joe Robles is working at Rutgers. We're friends. We get to know each other. But ultimately, Joe leaves and he goes down to Kennedy Space Center. Let's see if I got here. He goes to Kennedy Space Center. And while he's down there, he calls me up one day and he says, hey, we got some opportunities down here you ought to look at. I'll put you in contact with somebody. So ultimately, I apply to something. I go down to Kennedy Space Center and work. I don't know what. These are, there it is. I go down to Kennedy Space Center and I work. And I am business development tech transfer. And then while I'm down there, I'm on the phone one day with George Corfiatis, who I knew back when I was at when I was at Johnson Space Center, and ultimately kind of had a relationship with. I'm on the phone with him one day, and he says, "Hey, we've got an opportunity here at Stevens. You're finishing up your PhD. You ought to look at this opportunity. I'll put you in contact with somebody." So I reach out to somebody else. Lo and behold, I'm now leaving Florida and heading back up to New Jersey. And I'm taking a job at Stevens Institute of Technology. So now I'm there, I'm a faculty there, and I'm now looking for, I've been there for a while. For personal reasons, I'm looking to get back to Texas. And I'm talking to this guy over here on the left, David Nowicki, who's now faculty here. And I'm talking to him about my situation. And he goes, hey, there's some opportunities at University of North Texas. Let me put you in contact with somebody. And that's the guy on the right, Wesley Randall, who's also faculty here. And next thing you know, I'm here. So here's the part of this whole story. My career has gone from Johnson Space Center to Rutgers to Kennedy Space Center to Stevens to University of North Texas. I've been an assistant professor. I've been a research scientist. I've been a business development manager. And I've been a faculty again. I've been tenured in engineering. I've been tenured in business. I've done many, many different things. But in all of that, all these people know each other. So my professional network got me here. My professional network got me every job I have ever received. I have never cold applied for a job and gotten it. Every job I've gotten is because somebody said, I know somebody. Professional networks are very, very important. And you need to build them and you need to nurture them. And that's what we're going to talk about next. But before we do, I do have to give credit. I always say it happens about 25. As soon as you realize you're just like your parents, life gets a lot easier, right? And I credit my standing here today to my dad, because my dad is the one that connected me with Don Henninger, which put all of that in motion, okay? And I got to put my mom up there because, you know, moms are wonderful because no matter how ugly you are, they'll tell you you're good looking, right? And that's why moms are wonderful. All right, so one thing that's fundamental to building a network is trust. Trust, if you think of trust as a currency, something that you hold and you're going to spend on other people, and likewise, people are going to spend their trust on you. If you start thinking of it as a currency and also realizing it's not just something you got plenty of and you can just throw around, that you spend it wisely, then you'll start thinking about relationships a little differently and who you have relationships with. And so I'm going to talk to you as trust as a currency, but with respects to what I call capital investment management. So if we think of our trust as a currency and now it's a capital by which we're going to invest, we change our perspective on relationships and what they mean. And I'm going to talk to you about 4 things that constitute what I'll call trust capital. Right? So you can think about capital. We can talk about the forms of capital investments. If you're a finance major, you probably can tell me all what those are. But I'm going to talk to you about the 4 trust capitals. Right? First one is sincerity capital. We will trust people because of sincerity. So how sincere do I believe you are about what you say and what you do? Right? Do you trust that your mom's telling you that you're good looking? I wouldn't. Right? Because I don't believe my mom's sincere. I don't. To be honest with you, now that I'm in the age that I am, I don't even believe my wife when she tells me I'm good looking. I definitely don't believe my kids. right? But if some random stranger walks up to me, in some ways, I think they're sincere. And so if they tell me I'm good looking, I actually might believe that because I believe that they're saying that without some ulterior motive. So sincerity is a currency of trust. How sincere are we about what we say to others? And how sincere are others when they say things to us about what that is? Depending on that level of sincerity will depend on whether that relationship has a trusted connection or not. So think about that when you communicate with others, how sincere you are about what you say. I can tell you, I lived in New Jersey for a long time. Born and raised in Texas, moved to New Jersey, major culture shock, major. But I can tell you this, the one thing people will tell you, oh, New Jersey people are rude. Here's what I learned, having grown up in Texas. New Jersey people aren't rude, they're just honest. Southerners are nice, but they're not honest. What I mean by that is somebody will tell you something because they want to be polite, but it doesn't mean that's what they mean. In New Jersey, I knew if somebody told me something, that's what they meant, right? They were just more upfront. So in essence, some ways, when I'm in the South compared to the Northeast, my ability to trust somebody happens faster in the Northeast than it does in the South because I can quickly get to the sincerity of the situation faster than I can in the South, right? So sincerity is a capital. The next one is competence. How much do you know? Right? I'll build trust in somebody because I believe they know something. It's like going to the doctor. I can go ask my friend about my brain tumor, but I'd probably be better off going to a brain surgeon and asking about it and have more trust in what I hear. Right? So there's a competency level in who we talk to. So when you think about what you want, when you want to know something in a relationship and you want to build trust in that relationship, who are you talking to about it? What are you going to do with that information? Is it a trusted, competent relationship that when you gain that information, you should act on it and do something? Or is it not? Or is it just your best friend telling you what you want to hear? Right? It's confirmation bias. That's another issue. So competence. Next, reliability. Do you show up on time? When you're asked to be there, are you there? I can tell you, showing up early to something, to everything, will build trust in an organization and in your management chain to help you build yourself in your career. Showing up late to meetings or showing up right on time doesn't build reliability trust. If I give it to you, do I know it's going to get done? Right? How reliable are you? So this is another capital investment that we make in reliability. And the fourth one, care. Do you actually care? Sometimes people might act like they care and they don't. And then what happens? You lose trust. And that severs the relationship or breaks it down. If someone acts like they care and then demonstrates that they care, you build trust and strengthen the relationship. I mean, think about any relationship you've had with somebody. And the more you got to know them, the more that they seem to care about your well-being, the more you trusted them. I got a friend that says, I have 5 people in my life that I completely trust 100%. And my decision on who those 5 people are and whether I trust them is, if I was in jail, who would I call? If I was broke down on the side of the road, who would I call? Right? Who would I call that wouldn't ask me a bunch of questions, that would just pick it up and come help me? And I had that conversation with my daughter one day because she was going to get broke down on the side of the road where she might have gotten broke. There was something going wrong with her car. I was trying to talk her back to her place. And I said, if she gets broke down, and she's in San Antonio. And I said, if you get broke down, who are you going to call? And she couldn't come up with a name. And I said, well, what about so-and-so? And she goes, oh, I'm not calling them. There's no way. And I'm like, you need to, and then of course, after the event, I had a conversation with them. I said, you need to think about your relationships with people. And you need to think about who are your friends and who can you trust? Because you need to build relationships with people that you have a small network of people. Usually it is, people will tell you it's 5, that I can call one of these people and they'll come pick me up on the side of the road and help me out. Who are those people? If you don't have 3 to 5 of those people, you need to start working on your relationships. You should have some of those, right? So care capital. So you've got to care about other people and people got to care about you. That builds a trusted relationship. So those are your 4 capitals, right? Sincerity, competency, reliability, and care. So now what does it take? You've got those. You're exchanging these with people, right? And you may only exchange 1. You could exchange 2, right? So sometimes you pay things in dollars and in coins, right? Sometimes you pay it in different currencies. These are all different currencies, essentially, of trust. You might use multiple or you might use 1, a little more of some than a little less of others. But ultimately, we've got to maintain that, right? So this comes back to looking at trust as a currency and capital investments. I've got to maintain my investments. I've invested in our relationship. I've invested in our trust. So what's that going to mean? Well, the first thing we do to maintain our relationships is we reach out. You can't connect with somebody and say, man, that was a wonderful connection. You care about me, I care about you, and then it's over. And you expect that initial relationship where you had that major connection to stay. It's going to die on the vine. So you got to reach out to these people. And it doesn't have to be big. It can be simple stuff. Send them a text, like something on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, or make them a comment somewhere. Just reach out. Let them know you're still alive. You're thinking about them. It's not that big of a deal. Send them a card, give them a phone call. I've called people sometimes with the sole purpose of just saying hi, right? I got a friend of mine, very dear friend, now lives in the UK. And we now talk once a week. Every Monday morning, we have a conversation. Why? Because we have a deep relationship, and that relationship has started to die on the vine, not because we don't care about each other, not any of that. It just wasn't being nurtured. Neither one of us are reaching out. And we realized that we needed each other. We needed that relationship. So we started reaching out, right? Next one, check in. Just do it every once in a while. Sometimes it's a routine check-in, like I said, with my friend, every Monday morning, 8 o'clock. It's in my calendar. Every morning, 8 o'clock, we're on WhatsApp, video call on WhatsApp because he's in the UK, right? And so every Monday morning. So what's your check-in? Do you need a regular check-in? Maybe it's once a year you check in, right? And it doesn't have to be that big of a deal, but just check in with people, let them know you're around, make it regular. Maybe there's even a relationship you want to maintain, even if that person doesn't want to maintain it the same way you do. Just check in. There's people I reach out to and connect with simply because, and they may not care about my relationship with them, but I want that relationship with them. And so I check in. So for an example is in my position, we have an industrial advisory board. And they're companies, they're executives, and they're very busy. I promise you they're not waking up every day thinking, man, I'm going to give Brian a call. Oh, I can't wait to touch base with Brian, right? But on a routine basis, I reach out to them because I want them to know, look, I still love you. UNT still loves you. We know you're there. It's sincere, right? And it shows I care. So because of that, later on, when I send them a note and I ask them for something, they're going to reply, right? So keep that in mind. The one thing about trust and building trust, the more trust you build, the more someone's going to respond to your ask. If you don't have a good trusted relationship with someone and then you go, oh, hey, can you help me get a job? I can tell you in my position, you know how many students walk into my office and ask if they can help me get a job? Oh, do you know such and such company? Can you send my resume to so-and-so? And like, really? There's 350 students in our program, and I'm supposed to help you out over all the other 349? Why? What makes you different that I got to do something different for you than everybody else? But if I had some form of relationship with you, that it was a trusted, deep relationship for whatever reason, I might. So when you have, the bigger your trust is, the more investment you have in that trust, the more you're willing to do something for somebody else, and somebody's willing to do something for you. So if you value something, invest in the trust of that relationship. Invest in one of those four things. If you want that relationship to be more than just, hey, I know you, take those four capitals, figure out what they are, and invest in them. Right? Maybe you need to show more care. Maybe you need to show more sincerity. Maybe you need to ask them because they're competent in something. Ask them for their help. Sometimes it just helps to ask somebody for their help, even if you don't use it, to demonstrate that you value their competence. Next, connect. So you've got to do it. You've got to reach out, catch up, get into environments where the connection is rich. So get into small group situations, get into going out for a drink, going out for an eat, going out for a coffee. I don't care what, do something to connect with people. I will routinely, I'll say to somebody, hey, let's go get a coffee or something. So if anybody ever wants to connect with me, and I feel like it's going to be something more than just, hey, who are you? Who am I? Let's get to know each other. And I hope it turns into a richer relationship. I'm immediately going to something more casual. I'm going to say, hey, meet me for coffee. I'll take you to lunch, whatever it is. And I take them out. And because that is a time when people are going to relax. They're going to let their guard down a little bit. They'll start talking about things maybe not business related. And so then you can start getting into some of these other capitals, about sincerity and care. Because I can tell you, I'll put it this way. Let's just say you're driving down the road. This will really bring it home to understanding what that means. You're driving down the road and somebody in front of you cuts you off really bad and you're pissed off. And you go road rage, right? You're like really pissed, right? And you're riding their tail end and you're mad at them. And then you both end up at the same place, right? The gas station. And you're like, I'm going to tell this person off. And you get out of their car, they get out of their car, and it's your neighbor. How did your demeanor change? Unless you hate your neighbor. How did your demeanor change, right? You were just about to yell at them. You're just about to chew them out, cuss, flip them something, whatever it was. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh man, look at you. I didn't realize that was you. I wasn't really honking at you. I was just, I just give you a warning because you got a little, It all changes, right? Because you have a different relationship with that person than you do with some stranger. So think about that in your relationships when you're building them. If you want something out of somebody, you got to think about what you mean in that relationship and how deep is it. Likewise, without a deep relationship, you can't go to somebody you don't even know and ask for anything. So if you want something out of anybody, think about your capital investments. So likewise, you want to connect. Gratitude. You need to show gratitude in your relationships. You need to show people, I care about you, you care about me. I'm glad we have a relationship. Don't trivialize the relationship. Some people will build networks for the sole purpose, and they'll come back to you and say, oh, look, I got X number of connections, right? Good for you. My question for you is you can have 10,000 connections on LinkedIn. I'm proud of you. But of those 10,000, if you sent any of them a DM through LinkedIn, would they respond? Right? My thing is that when people tell me like, oh, I got 10,000 connections, I say that's great. Of those 10,000 people, how many do you have their cell phone number and you could text them right now and they would respond? That tells me a lot. So I'll tell you, one of the things that I do is, I know y'all probably aren't big Facebook users, but if you know anything about Facebook, because I know you're probably like Facebook's for old people, but the big thing on Facebook is people love when it's their birthday. Everybody likes to go and say happy birthday on their Facebook feed, right? And that's a big deal. I don't do it. People can do it for me all they want. I thank you very much. I'll send out the post the next day thanking everybody for being nice to me and saying happy birthday. But I don't tell anybody happy birthday. Right? The reason why is because I think it's trivial. I think it's Facebook sent me a notice that it's your birthday. I didn't even know it was your birthday until Facebook told me. And now I'm saying happy birthday to you to make you feel better about yourself. If you can't feel good about yourself for just waking up in the morning and knowing who you are, then you got bigger problems, and I'm not solving your problems. What I do is if Facebook tells me it's your birthday and I forgot or didn't know, and I have your phone number, I'm texting you happy birthday. So I text everybody. If I know it's your birthday, I will text you happy birthday. But I will not do it on Facebook. The reason why is because I believe, it's a weird thing that we have this world that we live in now, but I believe for me to text you shows there's a value in that relationship. I'm showing you care in that relationship because I believe posting something on Facebook is not showing you care. That's showing that you automated things. I think even some of you might even be able to automate to just tell everybody happy birthday when it's their birthday kind of thing. So you need to be gracious in who you are and what in your relationship and show that gratitude. Next one, share. So I had somebody in my office the other day. It was an undergraduate. And they asked me a question. And I said to them, they asked me a question about themselves and who they were. And they wanted my perspective on it. And here's what I said to it. I said, like, look, I've taught 2,000, 3,000 students over my career. I've taught thousands of students over my career. So I don't know every student I've ever taught. I've interacted with a lot of students and had wonderful conversations with them. But very few would I say I ever had really relationships with that I can say, I remember you, we experienced this, we had something we shared, right? This is one of those students. We've shared experiences, whatever that might be. And so when they asked me to tell them something about them, I said, you know what? I told them exactly that. I said, not many students can I do this with, but I can do it with you because I've known you. We've had conversations. We've shared stories, that kind of stuff. I said, I can tell you something about you because you have shared something with me about you over the years, right? I know who this person is. I know something about their personal life, so I can tell you something, honestly. Otherwise, you come into my office and I would just say, well, you know, you did great in my class. You got an A. You did all your work. You must be a good person. You know, I don't think you use ChatGPT to do your work. You know what? I don't know. So be willing to share with people as you build trust in the relationship, because you will, right? The more you trust, the more you'll share. The more you share, the more that'll build. But also keep in mind in any relationship, trust is a hard thing to build, but it's an easy thing to destroy. So easy to destroy. You can destroy trust like that, right? Still different than wealth, right? So if we think of currency, it's really hard to build wealth, but it's really easy to blow it. So you can lose all your money in a heartbeat, but it's really hard. Like I can go to WinStar and I can spend 2 hours trying to make $100, and then I can lose $100 in 1 second, right? And I say that particularly, let's just say you're going to play a game where you actually have to think about it. Let's say you're going to play blackjack or poker, where you actually get to think as opposed to the slot machine where you just push the button, right? So if you're going to play blackjack or poker, you're going to work really hard to earn that money because you got to think, you got to make decisions. But then one failed decision and it can all be gone, right? Trust is like that. It's currency. You can work really hard to build it and you can lose it really quick. So share. I also have an approach that I believe in sharing with others to gain trust in others. So I'm okay to give things to you in order to gain trust in our relationship. So if I want to build more trust with you, I'm willing to share. I'll give you things. But I always say, be careful what you know what you're giving before you give it away. Okay. So you don't just give everything you own away, but know what you're giving before you give it away. And then maintain, keep your contacts up. You know, don't just let them die on the vine, keep them up. There's people from all throughout my career, all the way back to as far back as I can think, that I try to keep relationships going. Just ping them every once in a while, whatever it might be. You know, you just never know when a past connection is going to realize itself later and become important. You never know who is going to essentially emerge as a valuable person in your professional career that at one time just seemed like somebody you knew, an acquaintance. And then last, or no, I don't think that, there might be one more. The other one's space. Don't crowd people. I know you want to build a relationship with someone, but don't overbearing yourself on them. Don't constantly call them. Don't constantly share. Don't overshare. Be careful what you share sometimes. Some people don't want to hear it, right? It's like the student that was sitting in my office. I even told him, I said, look, I, I only share so much with you because my level of trust with you is right here. Until my relationship and our trust relationship builds, I might share more with you. So there's things about my personal life you don't know, and I'm not going to tell you. And then they opened up to me about things about their personal life, which showed me that they had a level of trust in me. And so because of that, I realized the value of that trust, and I held that important. So I didn't take that information and go, oh, man, I'm going on Facebook and no, I held that as valuable because I realized they shared something with me that they probably hadn't shared with anybody else, right? And so sometimes people need space. Sometimes you can't push them. You got to, it's the whole thing like, you set it free and if it loves you, it comes back, blah, blah, blah thing, that kind of stuff. So it's like that with relationships. Sometimes people just got to disconnect in order to reconnect. All right. If you want to link with me on LinkedIn, I'm more than happy to do it. Here's my problem with LinkedIn that's developed over the last probably 1 to 2 years is unfortunately, LinkedIn is probably the best professional social media, online, whatever networking thing that's out there. Unfortunately, it is starting to look a lot more like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And that's depressing because I'm seeing too many political posts. I'm seeing people putting memes up about various things, jokes, all this kind of stuff. I don't care that your kid did well in soccer. I really don't. I don't at all. I don't. Not on LinkedIn. You want to tell me that your kid won the championship in soccer on Facebook? Go for it. But on LinkedIn, I want to know about professional communities. I want to know about job opportunities. I want to know about career advancements, about the profession and how it's changing. I want to know those things. I don't want to know about all your personal life. Okay. And so, unfortunately, LinkedIn is getting sort of kind of going the wrong way. And I think it's going to continue to go that way. Once it starts, it's like one of those things, it's all social media. Once it starts down that path, it's just going to go faster and faster down that path. So my prediction is probably in the next couple of years, there's going to be a new platform emerges for professional networking that's going to kind of push LinkedIn to the side because I think LinkedIn is getting messed. It's just getting diluted, right? The people that contact me now on LinkedIn through either trying to connect with me or DM me for not professional reasons, for selfish reasons is ridiculous, right? So it's just not good. But it is a good platform for now, right? I mean, I did have a guy reach out to me here recently who just happened to see something that I posted, and he was an exec at a company up in Pennsylvania and wanted to talk to me about something. And we had a nice video conference yesterday, and it worked out really well, but it was because of LinkedIn that we connected. So it's still valuable. I'm not saying it's not valuable, right? Last year, we did a really cool session in this class on veterans and veterans essentially going back to school. It's a really cool panel discussion, and that came because a veteran that from our program who was a veteran that got a degree out of our program reached out to me about doing more for veterans. And so we decided to put that panel together, super successful, a lot of fun, great. We're going to do it every November now in the fall. So it was just a great idea, but that happened because of LinkedIn, right? So there is value, but I'm just letting you know, be careful, right? Any questions? Oh, I'm going to fight. You don't want to fight? Really? I mean, we could fight. We could put money on it. Go ahead. Oh, no, we're not doing that. That's cheesy, right? There's no blood involved with that. Go ahead.
Checking in with your network, especially later in your career, if your network.
Yeah, so one of the things that I do with everybody I know, and this will be the case with anybody, right? Anybody you ever know, if I mention their name, anybody in your network, there will be something that mentally you connect with them, whatever that is, right? Whether it was where you worked, something you experienced together, there's something that connects you with them other than just their name. If it's just their name and there's no deeper connection, then maybe that's not a good connection for you. But ultimately, there's something. And so typically, I'll use that to reach back out to people, right? Hey, remember the good old days? Or, hey, I was just like, even things like, I happen to be walking down the street and I see something that reminded me of something that we did back when I'll get my phone out, I'll text them. I go, oh man, I just saw such and such. Remember those days or whatever it is, or a song. I mean, there's a song that me and somebody else used to listen to all the time. Hey, I just saw this song on the radio, or no, I say I saw it on the radio, but I heard it on the radio, but I say see it on the screen. I've done that before where I'll be driving and something comes up on my Pandora and I take a picture of it and I text it to somebody and say, hey, look what just came up on my Pandora, right? So I find ways and that to me allows me to touch a little bit more personal in that connection. And I'll just do that every once in a while just to maintain, relationships or connections. Somebody told me the other day that they met somebody that I knew, right? And I was like, oh. And so then when I got done with that conversation, I texted that person and said, hey, guess what? I just ran into somebody that you know. Da, da, da. And that was the end of the conversation. They said, oh, that's cool. And that was it. But it's just keeping that kind of just finding ways to touch people.
A similar question. You were talking about reaching out to the industrial advisory board periodically. And I was trying to think through, like, how do you continually reach out to people in a way that isn't a burden to them?
Okay. That's a great question. That goes back to the space piece, right? So I don't want to constantly do it. So I make sure I give people enough space that when I do it on whatever frequency, it's not too frequent, right? Let's just say depending on the person let's say it's a president of a company. I'm not going to ping them probably even once a month. It might be every 4 or 6 months. I'm just pinging them for whatever reason. And then likewise with people, if the more I want that relationship to be deep and rich, the more it goes back to, again, the sharing piece and stuff like that. So for example, I've learned over the years with our industrial advisory board, I know personal things about some of those people, right? Not personal like, they had an affair with somebody or something. I'm talking about personal like I know their hobbies, right? I know what their sports interests are or whatever that might be. And I find out where they went to college. So if that's the case, then like, for example, if anybody on our board, which I don't think anybody does or did, went to Indiana, I can tell you last night, I would have been texting everybody I knew that went to Indiana. And I would have said, hey, it's really cool that Indiana won the national title, right? But I don't really know, like a good friend of mine, his son goes to Indiana, but that's all right. It means a really good friend. I don't need to worry about that. But if I would have known anybody on the board did that, right? I would do that. So I find ways, that's where you get to the sharing piece. Once you build a relationship and you start sharing, that you're sharing more personal things, use those as ways to connect with people in a different way. And it builds richness in the relationship once you make it personal, right? It's no different than like I said, the whole road rage thing, right? If the person that cut you off, you have a personal relationship with, or you don't, it completely changes your rage. It really does, right? We're very mean to people we don't know, and that's because we don't care about them because we don't know them, right? So, any other questions?